Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today we're going to talk about a novel that is really a great thriller and much, much more. The title is The Conviction. The author who's come to join us is Robert Dugoni. The publisher is Simon & Schuster. Thanks for stopping by.
Jim, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You know, in looking over the bio, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. It says somewhere in the bio that you're in contention for a 2012 literary award.
I am.
Do we pray for you? Or
yeah.
Do we buy?
Actually,
we want you to win.
You can vote for me.
Oh, good.
You can vote for me. I have been nominated. My novel Murder One, which came out last June, has been nominated for the Harper Lee Award for Excellence in Legal Novel Writing.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it's going to be decided in August, and I'm up against Michael Connolly and David Ellis, and the panel of judges is Condoleezza Rice and Lisa Scottolini and Linda Fairstein and a couple other people, but the public gets a vote.
One of these people is a Scottolini?
Lisa Scottolini.
With a Dugoni?
Does that? Don't you think I should get that vote?
We should get something. I think we got that vote. Yeah.
Yeah. So the award's given by the ABA Law Journal and the Alabama School of Law, and if you Google Harper Lee and ABA Law Journal, you'll get the voting page, and you have your choice to vote among the three of us.
All right, let's stuff that ballot box and out loud. It's a young man who's lived many years in San Francisco, now lives in Seattle, and has done a lot of law practice, but he told me before we started the show that he's kind of tapered that off in favor of edging toward being a full-time writer.
I am. You know, I'm one of 10 kids, and I grew up in a family where, we didn't have a lot, but we had enough, and so it's hard to walk away from things. When you have that, it's hard to walk away, and it's nice to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You don't get that in writing. Your paycheck comes every 6 months, and you're never quite sure how much it's going to be.
Yes, and how much the publisher's lying this time.
Well, I don't want to say that, but
no. Well, I said,
but I've heard it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's nice to still be able to practice law and make a living. Actually, I still enjoy it.
I said in the open that this is a very thrilling novel.
Thank you.
But it is more than that, and it's a couple of other things. One of them, which they're beginning to talk about in reviews and so on, is that it is the story of the relationship between fathers and sons. And the father in this case is, of course, a lawyer, a very successful one. He's called the lawyer who doesn't lose.
Correct.
His name is David Sloan, and he has a son, Jake. Tell us about that relationship as the novel opens.
Sure. Sloan is a guy that's used to being able to fix things. He's the knight in shining armor. He's the guy who rides in on the horse and solves problems. But in the novel Bodily Harm, which came before, there was a tragic thing that happened in Jake and Sloan's life. And Sloan, thinking he did the right thing, in essence gave Jake up to his real father, his biological father. So as the book opens in The Conviction, Jake has been arrested. He's gone out on a drinking and drug binge, and he's been arrested. And Sloan is rushing down to California to the Martinez courthouse to try to save Jake, which is what Sloan always does. And lo and behold, Jake tells Sloan he doesn't want his help. He wasn't there when he needed him, and he doesn't need him now, so get out. And, that's a dilemma that every parent faces, and it is something that the reviewers have picked up on, mm-hmm. that aspect of, what happens when your kid gets in trouble, and what do you do, because it breaks your heart. You want to save your child, but your child doesn't want help, or your child doesn't recognize they need help. And I take it then one step further. As the book progresses, not only does Jake not want Sloan's help, but when Jake realizes he really needs Sloan's help, Sloan can't help him because of the circumstances that Jake finds himself in, and because of the circumstances involving the juvenile justice system that Jake becomes a part of.
Well, and the nastiest part of that, I think, is that Jake puts himself into the bad position, puts himself before a crazy judge. That's the nicest thing I can call him.
Right.
Crazy. And winds up incarcerated in a place called, so nicely, Fresh Start.
Exactly, yeah.
And Fresh Start is not nice. It may be fresh, but it sure ain't nice.
No, I kind of wanted a almost a modern day juvenile Cool Hand Luke type of situation where it's remote, it's isolated, and nobody really has their finger on the pulse on what's going on there. So that's really what I was looking for. I was looking to isolate Jake and isolate Sloane. And we authors, we look to do those kind of things because when somebody gets isolated, then you can really ratchet up the tension.
Yes, and they're isolated, kind of standing alone against a covey of nasty guys who are, making money hand over fist.
Yeah, this is a book where I really wanted to have some strong antagonists. I wanted some people that my readers would not like.
And you got them.
Thanks.
I didn't like them a lot. One of the other themes that is in this book, besides all the thrills, besides the father-son relation, has to do with the privatizing of the criminal justice system. We'll look at that when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Robert Dugoni is our guest. Robert has roots in San Francisco and the Bay Area, now living in Seattle, writing novels and still doing some lawyerly work. His latest book, The Conviction, and the publisher, I forgot to mention, my goodness, is Simon & Schuster. Now, usually I have in hand some reviews, and I, share pieces of them with the audience, always in a highly complimentary way, and they didn't send me any.
Oh, no.
So this gives you the opportunity to cite as best you can. Paraphrasing is acceptable.
All right.
The review that you've gotten for this book so far that makes you happy.
Well, the reviews have been fabulous. I've actually been really very, very pleased. But the best review, I think, is I just received a review from the Associated Press, which ran all over the country. So that made it very special. And I've often been...
Wait a minute. Now, we call that it went viral.
Okay, it went viral. I've been compared to a number of different writers.
Yes.
And it was nice because the end of this review said, Dugoni has often been compared to Grisham, Thoreau, and Baldacci. At this point, he's better.
Hear, hear. That's really, and I mean, just to be compared is wonderful.
Yeah, it was a terrific review.
Why?
And
great.
It's nice to stand on your own, and it's nice for your work to stand on its own. And so it was nice for, somebody as, prestigious as the Associated Press to recognize that and to say, this is a Bob Dugoni book now. You're going to get a Dugoni experience.
Yeah. Not an experience like.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was
Congratulations.
Terrific. Thank
that's
you.
Great. At one level, I feel this book is about the dilemma or the privatizing of the criminal justice system. You have a kind of headline in the book. It says, Selling Justice for Profit. That is one of the themes of the book, and it becomes kind of a pivot in the course of the plot. And what do you think as a writer and as a lawyer about what we're looking at, the privatizing of the criminal justice system, the main reason usually being money. That states don't have enough money to run it.
Right. Well, it was interesting because I had a dilemma when I was putting this book together that, it was in some respects based upon incidents that actually happened in Pennsylvania. But they were so unbelievable. I had the problem of fictionalizing a true story and people not believing it. Because what happened in Pennsylvania was there were two judges in a rural area who were taking kickbacks to send kids to a private for-profit detention facility. And, of course, the question is, where were the parents? Where were the defense attorneys? Where was the bar? This went on for 3 years, Jim. And these guys made a tremendous amount of money, and both of them were indicted. One of them pled guilty. And so the question was, how does somebody get away with this? Well, for a novelist, the question is, how do you make it believable that someone could get away with it?
Right? when I was reading this, that was one of the thoughts I had. This is not believable. And now you're telling me,
in fact, it's true.
Based in fact,
it happened, and and I'm sure it's happened before. And the issue is exactly what you raised. We are, we're in a state that is, has had issues with bankruptcy. There are other states and counties that are filing for bankruptcy. You have pensions, police, fire, teacher pensions that are being stripped because the states don't have the money to do it. And so, the answer always seems to be, well, we'll make it we'll privatize it. Capitalism at its finest. So let's privatize the legal justice system for juveniles, and we'll charge people for incarcerating these youth. Well, anytime you have money
that's
involved.
The craziest part about what you write here is that there is this system, and the place that they go to is called Fresh Start.
Correct.
And the juvenile criminals, whatever they are sentenced to this place, and then the parents have to pay money.
Correct.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And the other thing is that if an inmate is transferred from one county to the other, then that county has to pay the facility for housing an inmate that they should otherwise be housing. And of course, how do you make more money? You fill the beds.
Yeah.
And you make sure those beds are filled for a long time. And so you run the risk of having a system where the private facility makes more money the longer they keep the juveniles and making sure that each bed is filled. It's a real dilemma, like you said, because, the prison systems in a lot of states, California being one of them, are reaching maximum capacity. And so what do you begin to do in that situation? And it was an issue that I found interesting, and I thought if I could write it in an entertaining way, it may raise an issue such as, the one I also tried to raise, which was this father-son dilemma. How far would you go to save your son?
Getting back to the plot of the novel, what this means is that two young boys, Jake and TJ, are arrested, tried, quote unquote, convicted, and sent off to Fresh Start. These are two kids caught now in an injustice system. And the next task of you, the novelist, is to tell us what life is like. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty.
I had for the first time ever in a book, I actually had someone do some research for me in addition to my own research. And, depending on what you read, there are a lot of studies out there. There are a lot of articles out there on juvenile facilities, including the boot camp type of systems, and whether they're successful or not successful. And you hit the nail on the head. One of the things you're dealing with is you're dealing with a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and you're putting him in an adult-like situation, a military-like situation. And one of the problems is, in the military, when a boot gets done with boot camp, he's still in a structured environment. When a juvenile gets done with it, he's not. He goes home to the place where he was having the problems to begin with. So it's a real interesting situation.
And it's a situation in which, from the standpoint of justice, little or nothing can be accomplished. Well, this novel accomplishes a lot of other things, and when we return, we're going to look at some of them.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Robert Dugoni is the guest. The novel that we're talking about is his latest, The Conviction, published by Simon & Schuster. And we're going to, fly free without reviews again, because something has been said about this book in the desert. That's very, very important. The Tucson something or other?
Tucson Citizen, actually, which is the big newspaper down in Tucson, picked it as the #1 summer read, which was great because it was ahead of The Bourne Identity and some of those other books down there. But they called it the #1 the #1 cool read for hot summer nights in Tucson. So that was great. That was something great to see.
And there are a lot of those in Tucson.
There are.
A lot. So that should sell a lot of books because look at all the people who are hot.
Yeah.
in Tucson.
Crossed.
A lot of them. One of the things about this cockamamie system where kids are sent to places like Fresh Start is that it cannot happen without what we call politically a good infrastructure. And you don't avoid that. You get into that and you dig at it like crazy.
Yeah, one of the things is when you have a system that's failing, people have to be complicit because you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what about all the court personnel? What about the defense attorneys? What about all the people that are involved, the law enforcement, who I have a great deal of respect for? Where is the person that finally stands up and says, this is wrong? And more times than not, it's not any of those people. It wasn't in Pennsylvania. It was the mother of a son who thought, this is wrong. Something is not right here. And she reported it to a judicial board. And when she did, then as the story goes, things began to happen to her in terms of keep your nose out of it. Your son broke the law. And you raised a good point in the last segment, Jim, which is, Jake is not innocent. I mean, and I did this on purpose. I didn't want this to be a situation where he stole a pack of gum. I mean, Jake goes into a store, steals alcohol, steals a rifle.
Yep.
It goes out into an area that is, potentially could have population. It gets rip-roaring drunk and begins to fire off a gun. And I did that because I didn't want it to be a situation where somebody said, well, please, he would get off. It's just gum. No, I mean, this was a legitimate crime. But the injustice comes from a system that, that takes a 14-year-old boy without a legal counsel, without a parent present, and this did happen back in Pennsylvania, and asks him, well, you want to get out of here, don't you? You don't want to go through a trial. You don't want to go through this. You'll waive.
I'll waive.
You'll waive.
Yeah.
You really did this, didn't you? And so, Jake's going along with this because he suspects something's not right, but at the same time, it's pretty enticing. And what he doesn't realize is that he's cooking his own goose because once he waives counsel and he confesses, there's not a lot that someone can do for him. And that's the interesting part of the book. There was a one review service out there that said something to the effect of, well, Sloan is so well connected. I mean, wouldn't he just go and get help? And my response to that is, from who? I mean, his son is in prison for a legitimate crime. He's going through the judicial system. What else are you going to do?
Well, his friend from West Virginia, the detective, Tom Malia, that's exactly what he says.
Exactly. Yeah.
He says, don't give me this, we'll work the system, we'll get it done, we'll appeal, we'll get it overthrown and all like that, because that isn't going to work.
No, the problem with that is it takes time. And when you have kids in a situation where their lives are in peril, you don't have time. And so that's what I wanted in the book, is I wanted sort of that ticking clock where, you can't wait because the judicial system moves at a snail's pace. You can't wait 3 months for this and 3 months for that and 3 months for this. I mean, this is not something that happens instantaneous. I mean, we sort of saw this on a national level with Amanda Knox, who is from Seattle. And so we got a lot of coverage in Seattle. I mean, here's a situation where a young gal goes over into Italy to study. It's fabulous. It's the time of her life, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, she's in prison for murder. Well, what do you do as a parent? I mean, you're not going to just walk over there and convince somebody that she's innocent. So you got to go through the legal system. Well, what I wanted for Sloan was, what do you do when the legal system is broken and when the judicial system betrays you? Where do you go? What do you do? How far would you go to save your son?
Which raises the other question: what kind of a father are you?
Yeah,
it really is at the base of it all.
Yeah, I had a couple readers email me and say that their palms were sweating as they were reading the book, and as I had a dialogue with them online, the issue's not really, I identify with Sloan. what is happening is they become empathetic and they ask themselves, what would I do? Would I have the courage to do it? Would I have the courage to do what I need to do to save my kids? We'd all like to believe we do. I mean, I love my son. I have a 15-year-old son myself, and he's a great kid, and I love him to death. But if he got in trouble someplace, I mean, how far would I go? And I think that is what is resonating with parents and with teens that are reading the book. It's an eye-opener that sometimes there is no place you can go. And so you have to really be careful when you set out, to do something either at night, or if you're in another country.
Watch yourself.
Watch yourself.
Yeah. One of the great pleasures of the book, I think, is the way you handle time in this sense, that there'll be a chapter or a section of the book, and it'll have, this is the place where it's happening, and it's the place where the two fathers are. A lot. And then the next thing you see is the location where the two sons are. And boom, you switch over there. So that we're working both sides of the equation simultaneously in a very entertaining and painless way.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Well, no, I appreciate the comment. Yeah, what is interesting is, you try to leave your readers on a high point of tension at the end of every scene.
Yes.
And there's a scene that a reader at a bookstore last night was talking to me about, where she just was really, really at a point where she just wanted to go to bed and she couldn't, because it's a scene where Jake calls Sloane and says, "Tell Mom I love her." And of course, Jake doesn't have a mom, and that's an indication to Sloane something is very, very wrong.
I suggest you start your reading right now so that you'll be finished by bedtime. It's The Conviction. The author is Robert Dugoni. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.